try to find mentors and sponsors in this field, foster the spirit of collaboration. You got to have good intuition about how to select and pick good people.
Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm Drace, one of the faculty members here at NYC Data Science Academy. I'm joined by Bernard. Bernard, thanks for offering to speak with us and share some tips about the industry, your experiences, and so forth. If you could just tell folks a little bit about yourself.
First of all, Drace, thank you for inviting me here. I'm really very excited about this, for this opportunity to at least share some of my experience. I have always been in the IT industry for a very long time. And at some point, when you do enough of it, you kind of say, what else is there? And it's interestingly enough, my son actually was in the field. So, it was just a casual conversation with the son and the family. And he said, the data science, and this was many years ago. And he said, this seems to be the next field. And given that he is in that field studying about it, he knew and understood what that field represented and the opportunities that I heard from him. And this is my son of college age. It's just amazing. And of course, me, I always say, if you have a blind spot, you can't really know what you don't know.
Right.
And thereby, it kind of started a little bit of a journey there in terms of, well, what is this whole field about, right? And that's the type of question in hindsight that I feel a lot of, it doesn't matter, right? If you're still out of school, you could be a midterm career switcher or even a late-term career switcher. There's always where do I start? This is a very confusing field. Is it really a technical field? What is it, right? So I went through that process. And through my research and a lot of reading and of course conferring with a lot of people in this industry, and given my background, is it going to be a fit or not? So I kind of went through that journey of evaluation and getting some knowledge about the background. Ultimately, had a lot of options to take. I mean, we could always do the tried and true. Should I just go with videos? And of course, many years ago, it was not that huge in terms of the MOOCs that's out there. But just even about 5-6 years ago, data science as a major was not even that prevalent yet. So it was a very, very interesting times. I was now lucky that I kind of got to at least hear about it very early stages. And that's where I started looking into options, right? So online videos, university degrees, or boot camps. Long story short, I kind of really looked at all the options out there and called many of these boot camps. And that's how I kind of learned about NYC Data Science Academy. That's how I kind of first heard about it.
What were certain things that you looked for in this program that you knew the competition didn't quite have?
Yeah, when I was evaluating several boot camps, actually, the New York City Data Science Academy stood out. I think number one is the rigor by which you guys qualify the candidates for the boot camp. To me, that was very important, right? Their reputation. Because I always say, well, if I graduate from this boot camp, I want to make sure I'm part of a company that kind of produces good quality, talent, right? That is, to me, is a lifetime, a relationship that I will have. This is not something where I could just attend a boot camp, I'm done, off I go, right? This is more of the network that I literally would have just going through the boot camp, the support that I continue to garner from the academy in terms of recruiting help, advisement, resources. I can still tap into that on an ongoing basis. So.
Got it. So what is it that you do at the moment?
I currently am the lead data scientist for Lincoln Financial Group. We are a company that are one of the top service providers and carriers for annuities products. We are, I believe, the top one when it comes to fixed and annuities. Variable annuities were also the top two, and of course life insurance product and retirement planning services. We specialize in molding packages and service for a lot of our customers, and our customers could be end users, of course, consumers, and also the broker dealers and financial advisors out there in the entire North America.
The term lead data scientist, obviously you hear it in various positions and whatnot. I think sometimes folks get a little lost about like what's a lead data scientist, what's a senior data scientist. So I guess we could just kind of talk more about that specific area of your role. In terms of a lead data scientist, where are they in the industry? Like what do they normally do? What kind of skills do they have to have and so forth?
Right. First of all, that's a great question. A data scientist in its own right, just having that title implies a big spectrum of skills that's required, right? As we
Right.
know, it's not just all about the technical aspects of what data science represents. There's also definitely the domain knowledge and expertise that's required to be truly successful in this field. Stats and mathematics behind, technical fire that you can bring to the table. Applying that through technology, so this is all the programming and development work that you need to now blend in with the math and stats to come up with solutions that hopefully addresses all the domain knowledge that you understand and blend all of that together. And ultimately, the storytelling and interpretation aspect of things needs to also kind of cap that entire process or spectrum of skills end to end. Now, being a lead data scientist, you need to now layer even more skills above that, which is, of course, being able to manage a team, understand what it takes to drive a data science team to deliver on solutions. It's very important when you do come through the door with all this spectrum of skills and you're ready to perform. The first thing that people ask is, what business problem or business challenges are we trying to address? The mission there is really for a lead data scientist, or in many cases the senior data scientist, needs to be able to bridge a lot of what the business demands and translate that to the entire process by which a data science team can come in and actually address that.
Exactly.
Being able to also, of course, orchestrate the activities across a team. It's more of a people side business. You gotta have good intuition about how to select and pick good people to be part of the team, that they work well together. Need to foster the spirit of collaboration and building a power team. And while you're doing this, you need to be able to speak the language with the people who work for you, right?
Right.
A data scientist, I feel, in the industry is in a very unique position, because it doesn't matter how high in the organization you get promoted into, or you could be the chief data scientist for an organization, but the best ones out there will never not go hands-on to some extent.
Right.
And I believe that is true, because I do get that question all the time, is, Bernard, if I want to go and become a lead data scientist, can I just not do hands-on? And I said, in this day and age where things evolve so quickly, models, algorithms, new research materials are coming through the pipeline so fast, in order to stay ahead of the game and understand what it means to implement in the real world, you do need to go hands-on to some extent, to have that real experience, so that not so much as sometimes bringing it end to end and you're not 100% hands-on, but knowing enough to steer your team, right? And the fastest way, of course, of sometimes getting that credibility when somebody's working for you and you truly speak their language and they understand you, it just makes that role as a leader that more seamless in being able to get things done quicker and have the team work together faster.
And of course, also on top of that, if say things do ever break down, need someone to monitor as well, you also got to get in there with the roll up your sleeves and kind of firefight with the rest of the team.
Oh, too. Absolutely. I mean, a common challenge that we face is we have so much data going across. You're looking at, we have a term in the industry now called data fusion. Data fusion just really means when you're curating the data that you need and it's still not enough. Sometimes cases where having more data does not necessarily mean it's good. Having more of the right data is where it counts. So this is where, being able to be adept and agile, being creative in how you engineer what makes sense for the business, having that domain knowledge and having your team come through to be able to hunt for the right data is very important. So the fusion part is where it means you're integrating different sources of data, understanding what it means to engineer new ones, and so this is where statistical rigor and discipline is required, combined with the type of domain expertise where you can apply some creativity in coming up with some of these data points that differentiate you hopefully from your competitors in the market, right? So that's what I feel always excited about when I work with data scientists.
So speaking of working with data scientists and building your team, you're obviously involved in this team building process. Can you tell me a little bit about, like, for example, your selection and so forth in that aspect?
Right. So good data scientists are hard to find. I always say the demand is huge. I think I've seen the demand go up and down for these past many years. It continues to be very high in the market, especially in the coast, I believe. It's not going to be going down anytime soon. Demand is high, supply is getting better, However, as better as the supply is in the market that's feeding the pipeline of these required data science talent, the truly good ones are hard to find. So you have this community of companies and executives looking to build out a practice. You have recruiters out there hunting for these people. There's a plethora of these people available, but only a few are really the true good
recruiters
ones.
banging down your door too.
That's right. That's
I
right.
know
So,
about that.
so that's a very common
Yeah.
a common thing is that it is a lucrative market for the
Right.
recruiting agencies because there's so many out there and the demand truly is out there. Now, how do we select the good ones? I mean, it needs to be a very focused search, right? Obviously, you can't just blindly hit the market. This is where I really have an advantage, to be quite frank, is because being part of the academy, New York City Data Science Academy, I'm very happy that because you offer recruiting services almost for free, given that this is what the company believes in terms of being able to help people build the future, and you offer such a invaluable service to not only help the graduates of the alumni find their next opportunity, but also being able to marry the supply that you're now creating all this talent to companies like ours, where we can just tap into that resource. I think I do get the advantage because one, I understand the type of talent and the quality of talent that gets produced from the academy. So I already have at least a background of what I can expect. Now, granted, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate, but at least I kind of can start with a filtered criteria by which I can work with. So, in this case, I work with the academy to kind of, ask for qualified candidates. And given the relationship that I have with the academy, I tend to, get good recommendations. Sometimes, I do interviews, it doesn't work out. I mean, again, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. It has to be a fit with the company culture. Sometimes we look for certain things that are very critical as part of my team building process. But that's primarily my main resource that I go to. The advantage of that is I can get the hire faster. Believe me, anything that we can do faster, but still maintaining the quality of candidates, very important in the company, right? Now, it's not unheard of that companies look for people like this with 3 months, 6 months open position is still not being filled. That costs us a lot of overhead, besides also impacted the business of not having the right people work on the right products.
Yeah, and it also ends up creating a lot of work on your end too, because you end up having to fill those holes on your end, either personally asking some of your more senior members to start filling those holes and whatnot.
That's right. And it's also a painful recruiting process. If I have to work with recruiters and they don't understand the business that I am in, they don't know what I look for, and God forbid if they don't understand the data science industry, then it's gonna hit and miss, and there's a lot of false starts that gets into the game. So.
I understand one of your more recent hires was actually a graduate that from the summer program.
That's correct. So I was recently able to actually be able to hire somebody from the academy. I was very pleased with the hire. Now, granted, our business is not a simple business. We have a very complex hierarchy of products and services that we serve the market with. So I look for certain things in this specific position. I think I could summarize that to you with 3 C's, right? So I'm looking for that type of person who is curious, who has good critical thinking process, and also creativity. When you are faced in our business and want to differentiate or compete effectively, being able to not just understand what it means to model things and do predictive analytics, that's kind of all a part of the pipeline. But the first thing is always, what business challenge are we trying to resolve here? And being curious and understanding how we can do things differently with all that firepower that anybody could bring to the table. Without that curiosity and critical thinking process, we won't be able to come up with things that are more innovative. So this person that I had just hired from the academy, he had that in spades. So there's only one thing that needs improvement, of course, is the domain knowledge, right? So that's something I believe that I can invest in. We interviewed really intensively and say, of course, technically he has to pass the bar in terms of what it means to be able to have not only just the basics of data science, the stats and math, but also digging deeper to understand truly what's behind the scenes, what all these algorithms mean. With that foundation, anything else that we layer on top of that, communication skills, business domain knowledge, and of course the three C's, we kind of baked that all in the interview, and we found a great candidate, and it's working out really well for us now, right now. Very happy with that hire.
So speaking of, I would say not only the three C's, but I would say expectations of a graduate of the program when you are looking into hiring and interviewing from. What do you expect as far as the caliber of graduates? What is, I suppose, the standard that you're already holding if someone was to exit this program and then meet with you?
I expect them with, as far as basic foundation, obviously on data science needs to be there. A good grasp of the data science process is very critical. Understanding how to apply it is very important, and being able to bridge theory into practice. Now, one might not have all of that in one package. I think we look at the potential of being able to cross and bridge those two worlds together. So we sometimes get candidates out on the market where they're so good on the math stats and the technical aspects, but have no idea on what it means to apply what they know to solve all the problems and issues we have in the business side, in the world, what it takes to improve things, to reduce costs, bring in the revenue, how does this impact sales. So there's that business aspect of it, beyond just the business domain knowledge. Of course, business domain knowledge always helps, but understanding what it means to apply it is very important. Those are the type of behaviors I try to track in terms of the three C's come into play. Are they curious enough to ask the right question on not just you just require me to be able to model something, or is the question more of what are the challenges we're trying to solve? Those type of interaction I have with candidates is very important. That kind of gives me a peek into their thought process, how they kind of go about thinking through how they can leverage their own skills and help me for what I need to be able to resolve in my day-to-day job.
But also at the same time, I would say, I noticed you mentioned kind of fundamentals of data science. I think technical skills, you don't want them to be exactly a slash in that side aspect either. Can you kind of like maybe dig in a little bit also, for example, of what your recent hire or potential hires in the future, in that area, what are those topics of expertise you require from them on the more technical aspect as well?
Yeah, so from the technical standpoint, of course, understanding what I mentioned a little bit about the data science process.
Right.
That there are many technical aspects of it. It is, there's a technical side and of course the human side of the equation. The technical piece needs to be very strong to start. I think feature analysis, we always talk about what that represent, right? The whole exploratory data analysis that's involved, that has to be down pat. And I'm not just talking about a mechanical action that we perform to be able to produce charts and plots, right?
Right. It has to be a reason
again,
behind
right.
it.
So being able to, sometimes I call it extracting the story behind the data. When you do create all these plot and charts and metrics and numbers and outliers and all these numbers that you're showing the business, we can't talk in technical terms, right? So being able to also be able to interpret and do the story behind the data is very important beyond the technical piece. The second, of course, the feature engineering part is also very important. There are many ways to extract more predictive power in data. As I mentioned, having more data is not necessarily good most of the time, but if we do have the right data and more of that is being produced, that's the best way to attack it. So when we curate data and we do the fusion across many type of sources, both internal and external, and creating new innovative ones, that's the creative part that needs to be blended in with the technical side. Now, statistical interaction, when you're also creating all these new fields statistically, knowing what to blend together technically you need to know how to do it. This is not just a blind, let me just multiply feature 1 with feature 2 and get feature X.
No
It's
t-test for you.
Right, that's right. So I think understanding the concept and principle of the why is very important in addition to the hows, right?
Right.
And of course, goes without saying, the bread and butter of a great data scientist is, lies in the modeling.
Yeah.
Now, we could always just black box model something, but I think not many people understand, or data scientists sometimes don't realize, scikit-learn is not a perfect package.
Right.
So understanding, even if you just do a model train or a model fit or a model predict, everybody can do that, right? But understanding the logic and the representation and principles behind those algorithms are important. Case in point, the new hire that I had, we were doing a lot of feature importance, right? And saying out of actually I had the real case where I had like more than 1,000 of these fields that we had to work with, a couple of million rows. That's a massive amount of data, not big data level, but still massive amount that it could affect processing time. So we were hunting for what are the most important features. And voila, I mean, with scikit-learn, we noticed that a lot of the scikit-learn feature importance is not really that accurate. It's not as ideal and optimal as we would desire to be. So my new hire from the academy went into the code and literally rewrote some of the logic behind it. And the results are outstanding, more impactful, more consistent, more accurate. And this is an example of going beyond just the use of a black box, right? And that's the danger that I always warn many people. It's scikit-learn in terms of a learning environment. Yes, it has some good models, but we have to be careful, right? Understanding what these models represent and when to use it and how to use it. It's not a random throw anything at the wall and see what sticks. That's why I think the academy teaches a lot of that principles and theory,
right? Which
in turn, the payback behind that is really understanding the whys behind the black box is very important.
So I think for some of the folks who are watching this discussion, they're potentially looking at programs, potentially looking at NYC Data Science Academy. What would be advice you would impart to them if they were starting fresh into this field and they're looking to have a program, what they should be keeping in mind to really benefit from the program and take advantage of the program?
That's a great question. I always get asked that question. I always say, understand going in, knowing what your blind spots are. So you don't know what you don't know sometimes, so sometimes it's difficult to ask, to even start with the right questions to ask, right? So typically, if that's the situation, data science candidates who want to get into the field typically will say, I want to be a data scientist, where do I start? That's a very generic question, and everybody is unique in their needs. So my suggestion is, talk to people in the industry who have done it before. If you maybe have an inkling that perhaps you are interested in data science, but applying it where, again, the application is very important. As an example, if you want somebody who wants to be a data scientist, who you know to be a data scientist who works in the finance industry, perhaps is that something that you're also interested in? Talk to people like that. Get their experiences, get the pros and cons, get some of their experience of how they got into that space, right?
So you comb through a good amount of also applicants from our side where they have the PhDs, they have the learning accreditation and so forth. So I think there's kind of like those folks where they do fit in the quote unquote standard data science trajectory. But at the same time, I would say they're still missing, I would say, some of the elements that they don't consider, because without having been in the industry, without that first job, they don't think that, like, wait, this is something that I probably should have also built up. What would you give as advice to those kind of candidates from the academy, those the ones who have completed their PhDs, worked a few years in research, and have a quantitative or a computation background or a STEM background, etc.?
Those type of candidates, I mean, they bring so much firepower in terms of the background they have. I think I think the hire that I have actually has a tremendous amount of research background, mathematical major, PhD degree to go with that. I would typically start and ask them if they want to gain the foothold very quickly from what they already know and taking it to the next level of expertise. Work on projects, whether that are projects from Kaggle, projects that they could learn from industry. I know the academy has tons of what that represent. But being able, I think all of this represent that the application part. So now you learn all of this and you have some background. Try to apply what you know against a project. What's going to happen immediately when you take on a project that's based on the real world is what you have applied or what based on what you know will only, you're going to basically hit a wall. And you're going to find out, oh, I didn't realize there's more requirements to this. And this is where it gets interesting because you're now leveraging what you know, but you're also trying to extend and enhance what you know to get to the bottom of arriving at an answer, right? I met Peter Norvig once in one of the AI conferences and I asked him for advice. And I always say, what would you give advices for budding data scientists and people who are in this field? His advice was very simple. He just said, go out and build something, right?
Absolutely.
So that truly means, we have to build something that makes, gives benefit to the entire community of people who could tend to benefit from what we're doing. So finding those relevant challenges, answering and helping in the business imperatives. If you can make a change and impact, humanity in a positive way, there's so much more need for that. Data scientists definitely can make its mark in the world when it comes to that type of benefit that they can bring to the community and to the companies that they work for.
Yeah, we get a good amount of actually corporate sponsored projects for students to work on. We're very lucky in that a lot of industry experts actually reach out and say like, hey, we know your academy actually churns out a good amount of students and they have demonstratable expertise. Would they like to work on some of our projects, our data science projects? And probably the number one most requested types of projects tend to be some sort of building, whether it be building an API, building something that links towards their current interface, or just some sort of deliverable in terms of analysis reports and models and whatnot.
Right.
And of course, the models actually have to be somewhat scalable as well. It can't just be like, okay, I built this, it's living in my Jupyter Notebook script.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Call it a day.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because not many people realize that data scientist, the end-to-end process that we talked about.
Exactly.
Our work does not end on the model.
Right, exactly.
When your model produces the level or type of inferences that the business needs, you got to think about how can I scale this so it becomes an operational and repeatable process or service that the business can use, and it needs to be something that either ultimately ends up as a edge of the glass experience for your end customers, right? That's what it takes for a data scientist to truly engage, and that's why it's a multifaceted role. We engage with sales, marketing, the business, IT, sometimes legal, finance, name it. Data scientists have their fingers on all of that stuff. So opportunities are endless when it comes to that type of a field.
For those who have a few months to prepare, what would you impart to them?
If you have a few months that you could actually, as part of your learning process, you should really look into using boot camps. What a boot camp offers is an immersion into the entire field very quickly. The broad spectrum of skills that we talked about, a lot of focus on the foundational elements of the technical aspects of data science. You get a lot of that literally, within the months that you'll be exposed in it. I think the hands-on experience is definitely invaluable, and think of it as a fast track, and understanding the whole spectrum, because the whole purpose of boot camp is going to the boot camp and be able to have the opportunity to shift your mindset. I think that the world of the new business era is all about the data-driven culture. If you have been involved in a very different field, in a very different maybe practice, you could be coming from IT, finance, it doesn't matter. But having that initial shift, the Academy offers that in spades. I knew I had that experience. Now, being honest, it was the toughest thing for me to go through. It is because the mind shift and the culture shift is so quick. But if you stick with it and you persevere through the boot camp, it is I call that as an investment, definitely, of energy, time, and effort that is be well spent, that will pay back in spades.
Is there any last things you would like to share with the audience?
Thank you again for the opportunity to really share our experiences. I benefited so much from the Academy and continue to do so. The only perhaps parting thought that I could give to the audience is, understand what that this field represent is not a simple field to get into.
Right.
However, it is a very very exciting field. A lot of opportunities involved. Try to find mentors and sponsors in this field. Choose what is the best avenue that works for you, that makes the most sense in terms of learning in the process, understanding more about what I call as a trade craft is involved, and then talk to the academy. The people there will help you, advise you, maybe steer you in the right path on what to look further for.